KnockBack, the retro and nostalgia podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to KnockBack. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my brother Dagan, the Kyber crystal using Moriarty. Dagan, how are you today?
Is that what they're calling methamphetamine these days?
Yeah, Kyber crystal. Yeah, there probably is a strand of meth called Kyber, you would have to assume.
Oh,
right?
Clever. Those clever bastards.
I know. Well, we just made up. We should quit the show and go cook meth.
I mean, Breaking Bad, Part D.
Yeah, Part D.
Part D.
D. What's going on in your world? How's everything?
Here's what I'm thinking about. You ready? I gotta take my headphones off to show you this.
Okay.
Look at this. Look at this head of lettuce.
Oh man, you look great.
Look at it. Do you think it's easy? Look at this friggin' hair, dude. It's
I think
crazy.
you look. I love it. I think it looks
I really wanted to clean myself up for this podcast, but I just
Why
the time
bother?
came and went. What do you want from me? At least I'm wearing the hat.
Yeah, these people aren't worth
out
your
of
time.
respect.
Don't worry about that.
For our viewers, but
Well, I appreciate that.
yeah. What about
Thank
you?
you.
What's going on today? It's Friday, heading into the long weekend. Holiday
Yeah,
weekend.
Nothing really going on. I'm just I'm going to Uncle Mike's after this for dinner,
I know. I'm jealous.
and
I'll be honest.
just
I'm jealous.
yeah, that's fine.
What are you gonna have?
I don't know. You didn't say. Micah cooked the dessert, so we're bringing that. And I saw Mom 2 days ago for
Nice.
dinner,
Now
so
I'm
that
je-
was
now
fun.
I'm jealous again.
So just trying to maintain these
Okay.
various familial relationships as I work. But yeah, no, nothing really going on. I mean, I had a bunch of writing deadlines last weekend for Lilymo stuff.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so I haven't had a day to myself really in a while. So this is the last thing I'm going to do for, like, I have a bunch of clerical shit and some business stuff to do, but I'm not doing any more content until Monday.
Oh, that's good.
And yeah, so this is like the last thing I have to do. And then maybe I'll go smoke some trees and
Some
do a
doobage.
run in Returnal real quick, and then I'll go to Uncle Mike's. But and by the way, that game Returnal, I know you don't have a PS5 yet, but it's haunting me. Because I don't know if I can beat it. It's like one of those few games where I'm like, I actually don't know if I can beat this game, and it's bothering me.
My curiosity is piqued on this game, just privy to social media conversations. I have to say, there's some. I mean, Ghost of Tsushima.
Tsushima, yep, Tsushima. You'll like that one.
I mean, dating all the way back to Spider-Man for PS4. I mean, there's so many games I haven't played yet that I really want to play, but this Returnal game, I have to say, I'm curious. I'm curious.
Yeah, it's
the
good.
difficulty
It's good.
sounds, interesting onto itself.
Yeah, I don't think you've really been super introduced to the idea of a roguelike yet, which is a whole another can of worms that you've kind of missed.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't like those kinds of games. I don't either, but every once in a while I'll play one that I enjoy.
Yeah.
What was that one? Dead Cells was pretty good, and others. But yeah, I usually like more, not linear, but storytelling and worlds to explore. And I don't like dying and going back to the beginning and losing all your stuff. And that's the thing about Returnal is you just can't really build too much to help you. It really is primarily skill based, and I'm just not very good at it, and it's annoying me.
Wow,
to no end. It really is. I talked about it a lot on Sacred Symbols this week, just about how it's really like in my brain and like a brain worm. Like it's taunting me. I just can't get any further in this game.
Very smart. Very compelling game design. That game is going to live on in, for replay value, I think, right? Because once you get good at it, then it'll be a more satisfying experience to go through again, knowing what you know from the first time out, that type of thing. I guess it speaks to the model of that type of game. Yeah,
and I feel like, it's like Demon Souls and some of these other games that Sony does where I think they just have, they burn for a long time at a low heat and people just continue to buy them. So we'll see. But that's everything that's going on. Nothing too crazy.
Good luck with it. I really would like a PS5. I know they're still largely, like Nintendo Wii-esque, like shades of those days. Like where are they? Like you can't get one still?
No, they're like you can't buy them in stores at all. Like pretty much they never get stocked. You have to buy them online and
okay.
And they let people know ahead of time. They queue up at these various places, but no one can really get one. It is kind of messy, but with the rumors of the new Switch coming out potentially in September or October, hopefully that will maybe tamp down PS5's demand a little bit so people can finally find one.
Actually get one.
We'll see.
Is it an artificial demand that they're creating and they doing the Nintendo thing where they're not?
No, apparently they've sold more PS5s than PS4s in the time frame. So PS5's trending higher than PS4. They just can't, which is crazy actually. They just can't sell, they can't manufacture anymore. And a lot of it has to do with just microchip shortages in China. Sense. I think they have everything else they need.
Okay.
But what was interesting about the Nintendo thing, I thought, was there was in Bloomberg, which is they were saying that somehow Nintendo's just kind of circumventing this chip shortage. Like they have some sort of relationship or handshake. Like it doesn't seem like it's affecting their ability to make what they need.
Oh, so Nintendo.
Meanwhile, PlayStation and Sony, or I'm sorry, Sony and Microsoft rather, are using the same company AMD to make custom chipsets, and so they're taking from the same well. It's complicated, I guess.
Very interesting, dude. I'll say it again, Nintendo. Yeah. You fascinate me.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Definitely, they're amazing.
Oh, they're
amazing. Very interesting company. All right, Dig. Today's episode, as I think everyone knows when they clicked on it, is rewriting Star Wars Episode 9. So just to catch everyone up, if you're coming into this episode fresh, we highly recommend you go back to the episodes number 159 and number 164 of KnockBack.
Good call.
This will be episode 173, I think. So yeah, go back to 159 and 164. That's rewriting episode 7 and rewriting episode 8. I'm sorry. And this was a suggestion or voted on by our audience over at patreon.com/laststandmedia, where more than 12,000 of you now support us, and we very much appreciate that.
Bitches.
Son of a bitch. God damn it. And so we appreciate your love, kindness, and support. One of the perks you get over there is putting topic ideas out there. Everyone votes on it in the audience. And this is one of those topics. And we decided to do it over 3 shows instead of 1 because we thought it would be more fun that way. So you'll need to listen to episode 159 and 164 if you want the full dealio as we go forward. But I think this is what we'll do, Dig. This is what we did in the last one. Is I'll let you go first and then I'll go second.
Okay.
What we want is maybe bring us up to speed, a little bit of a synopsis thus far.
Okay.
Then you should read your movie's crawl.
Gotcha.
You could title it if you want. I continue not to title my movies for some reason. And then you can take as much or as little time as you need to bring us through, as I did. So I'll just let you know, I've done the same thing every time. I've made a crawl, and then I've written 8 paragraphs, like 8 beats.
Oh, you concise bastard.
And that's just the OCD in me speaking. Like once I do it once, I have to keep doing that.
I like that model,
yeah. Though. But it just gives us like 8 beats.
Yeah, that's great.
To go through. So that's how I'm going to approach it. You're free to approach it however you'd like. So I leave it to you, and as I've done before, I will have I always am writing notes. I'll be writing notes, and I'll interject if I have a question or I want you to expand.
Okay, cool.
And so I leave it to you, my friend.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. That sounds like a good model to me. I could break mine into chunks, maybe into thirds or something. We'll see. I figured you would want to approach it that way again, so that'll work. You can do however, just to be clear, you can do it however you want. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be the way I do it.
Yeah. No,
be true to yourself.
I understand. Yeah, we'll figure it out. Now,
okay.
I'll bring you guys back up to speed. Does it sound good if I just read my first 2 opening crawls? Would that work as a pretty concise synopsis?
That's a good idea. I'll do the same.
Let's do that. So if you guys go back, and I like the idea of seeing how committed the KnockBack listeners are. Like, once this rolls out for everybody, let's say our episode 9 podcast, will you guys go back and actually listen to 7, 8, 9 in a row? Are you that dedicated? I'd like to test your mettle, to be honest.
I would as well. And I'd also like to test your mettle. We're going to put on some rat. We're going to, do things of this nature as well. So we'll also test that mettle. But first we'll test your...
Good thinking.
Yeah,
good thinking.
Please.
Some docking.
Oh, definitely. There must have been a hair metal band or something called Test Your Metal, right? Or like a record. Test Your Metal sounds like an amazing record name.
How could they not be?
Like mental health, or what was that one that was mental health?
Was that the score? Metal
wasn't it? It was someone had a record called Mental Health. It was Quiet Riot, I think.
Maybe, yeah.
And I'm like, that's such an awesome name for a record. Good. Mental Health.
Any play on the word metal, you would figure. Even like an amateur rock band, metal band would have to explore that.
Test Your Metal. And it's a picture of Metal Man from Mega Man 2.
If not, you metal bands out there. All right, Kyle.
Let's start with my episodes. That was a tangent. Please go on.
What'd you say?
That was a tangent. Please.
I love a tangent. I love a tangent. All right. So going back, my Star Wars Episode 7 was called Dawn of Ghosts. And here's the crawl. Many years ago, after the destruction of the first Death Star, Darth Vader devised a plan for a new and secret evil to be unleashed upon the universe. However, an age of order and justice has prevailed. A decade and a half after their decisive second victory over the Galactic Empire, the Rebel Alliance has restored the Republic. The Empire's looming shadow has long faded, and it has been a time of growth, pride, and prosperity. But once faint whispers of darkness have grown louder, and vengeance emerging from those old shadows and others may soon be imminent. Okay?
Okay.
All right, so that was Star Wars Episode 7. Star Wars Episode 8, The Infinite Shadow.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here's the crawl. Since the destruction of the Galactic Empire, the Republic has enjoyed a period of growth and relative peace. The once scrawny rebellion has developed into a powerful total alliance, a symbol of strength and justice in the universe. But once cryptic rumors of a gathering darkness have become more concrete, and a new imperial force seems to be forming in the shadows. Driven by their anxiety over this elusive but intensifying menace, the Total Alliance unleashes its old war machine, echoing the ways of its ancient enemy, fighting viciously to suppress and crush any perceived threat. But as some begin to question the actions of the Total Alliance and the credibility of a reborn galactic empire, the real threat begins to reveal itself. Bred from an ancient evil, it may be far worse than our heroes could have possibly imagined. Okay, so that's where we left off. Darth Vader has this old contingency plan sort of on hold with the Emperor's leave. Somewhere during the Empire Strikes Back, sort of behind the curtain, behind the scenes, we never really know about these things. And, you know, eventually Darth Vader is killed. He dies. He sort of goes to the light side right before his death in his very last breaths, and sort of starts this rolling stone, this snowball down the hill that really can't be stopped, despite Vader's, you know, remorse or regret or turn in the end. So that's really what the story is built on. Okay. And that's where we left off.
Excellent. Very good.
So, Kyle, there's two things I want you and the listeners to know going into this from the outset for our Star Wars Episode 9. One, I do have parts of this told more like you're reading the book version or like a script with a little more color or description and or emotion from a certain character's perspective, so on and so forth, because those things are such a big part of what I'm doing with this story. You know, evoking the past, classic Star Wars feels, nostalgia, all of that kind of stuff. And of course, then I do also delve into parts that are more just a beat by beat telling of what happens. So sections with broader strokes as well that are more concise. So I do sort of go back and forth between those two models of storytelling. Hopefully that's entertaining because I'm going to be reading off the page largely.
Okay.
And the other thing I need you guys to know is, and I copped to this from the beginning, I had a story idea that I abandoned, but it's important to tell you what I did here. So I want to tell you guys up front that I had originally intended a sort of Metroid-esque reveal, dropping the bomb that my main villain, Darth Geist, is actually a girl, is actually female. That was something I wanted to do from the very beginning. But honestly, I couldn't manage to fit that in to the story without it feeling cheesy. Like I just couldn't find a way to work it in without it feeling kind of contrived. And so I need you guys to just picture an obviously feminine baddie in Darth Geist, you know, in terms of movement, body type. I want to make it clear that she's a girl, but I thought the interesting thing is, or a woman, she's actually pretty young. I think we decided she was 16. Although she never removes her mask, I thought it would be cool to make her obviously female or female gender, just kind of obvious, but not really talk about it.
Yeah,
you know,
I like
in
that
other
a lot.
words, to say like, I think Star Wars has long sort of lacked a female baddie. We had really cool characters in Clone Wars and stuff like Asajj Ventress and stuff, but not a major female player on the dark side. So I thought that would be kind of cool. And I thought it would be kind of cool to just let that be quote unquote normal, not really discuss it.
Yeah, I think that's really neat. It's interesting too, because we've often talked about Star Wars being somewhat progressive with positioning females in positions of power, but it seems like Lucas either intentionally or unintentionally kept the female form away from being bad. Like we don't even see any Imperial officers until I think the new movies where there's like any even female Imperial officers. And, it's like we said, I always assumed that they were sexist and I assumed that they were racist. That's kind of what I assumed, right? Like, so
it kind of feels that way,
right? So it's a kind of a nice little turn. I like that. I like that. Okay. I like not even like it's obvious. It would be cool if like her hair was sticking out or something of her.
That would be cool. That would actually be really neat. I wanted to do something with the hair, like sort of long black hair, like I don't know, like maybe I don't know who's like the Baroness from G.I. Joe.
Sure,
that would be kind of neat. But. Cool. So just so, and that's one of the things I kind of figured out along the way. Like, I think this would actually be kind of cooler. It'd be nice to pay homage to Metroid and seeing that Samus is a girl at the end and stuff like that. But this is kind of neat. I think this is kind of neat, a neater way to handle it. And that's it. I could start my new one if you guys are ready.
Yeah, delve in, please.
All right, let's do it. So, Star Wars Episode 9. I think I want to call it Invisible Bonds. Invisible Bonds.
Okay.
Runner-up was Whispering Bonds, but I think we're going to go with Invisible Bonds.
Yeah, I like Invisible Bonds.
You like that?
Yeah.
And this is the crawl. Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy has been split, divided between splintering allegiances. A powerful young protege and her group of sworn followers seeking vengeance, and an aging master torn in his grief between caution and action. All the while, a still faceless evil bears down, gathering momentum in the darkness. After long years waiting in the shadows, finally ready to plunge the striking blow through the heart of their old enemy. As that ancient evil takes shape, the Total Alliance reveals a troubling secret agenda of their own, turning light and darkness upside down. Old ideas of friend and foe confused in a mist of age-old grudges, fear, and unlikely allies. Our heroes prepare for a new kind of battle, a battle that will either usher in a new era of peace and understanding, or shatter every ideal they've always fought for. All right.
Okay.
Soak that all in.
Yes.
Be a sponge. All right. So, what do you think, Kyle, of me going about a third of the way through this and then kicking it over to you? Or would you rather just do...
No, just do your story and then I'll do my, just the way we did it before. I think people prefer that you just take the time you need. It's no big deal.
Okay. All right.
That's what we're here for. And then I think it allows people to better, assimilate exactly what you're saying. And then we'll just move on to mine.
Yeah, I think it's easy to understand.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay. All right. So, and then of course, interject at any time. This is kind of divided into quote unquote chapters. So, okay, let's start here. He couldn't even remember the last time he flew in the Falcon. So many past adventures in this faithful hunk of junk through the years, but it had certainly been a while. Luke smiled to himself as he thought about that fateful day, so many days ago, that he first met his best friend and that beloved ship of his. With a little sigh, he looked around the cockpit at each of his old buddies in turn. For a fleeting second, he forgot about his current troubles, and he was a kid again. A crusading young pilot, wide-eyed and eager for adventure. Chewie, we should be nearing those coordinates. Lock in the shields, full to front. Lando was uncharacteristically serious as he spoke, deeply troubled like all of them were. Luke was jarred back to reality. Chewbacca barked, obviously annoyed, and Han responded with his signature crooked smile, a forced one, and a comforting hand on his old friend's shoulder. The Falcon descended and slowed as they approached the destination, that random patch of space where Owen and his wingmen were killed, the foursome now searching for any clue as to what happened, all of them half hoping for any indication of this mysterious enemy, more than half hoping for a fight no matter the odds. The heartbreak and anger of Owen's death perpetually haunting them. They wanted answers, and they longed for a chance to strike back. Ooh. Luke understood his niece's rage. He felt it too. But in the same breath, he felt compelled to protect his young pupil, to protect all of them. Something held him back, though just barely, from moving against this mysterious enemy. He perceived a great power, and for the first time in a long time he felt fear. Not for himself, but for his friends. Old, unwelcome feelings returning to haunt him and manipulate him, stripping him of his instincts, making him second-guess his every move. Just then, a deep booming sound rattled the Falcon, and suddenly the small crew was plunged into darkness. The ship had lost power, and nothing outside the cockpit window was visible. Just a deep, penetrating blackness. Chewie, switch on the backup power. Han shouted as he fumbled in the dark, feeling amongst the gauges, instinctively trying to find the blaster he had left lying on the consoles. When the dim backup lighting flickered to life above their heads, they realized that the stars outside were no longer there, just the same far-reaching darkness. Then they noticed something massive out there had blotted out the entire sky. Whatever it was had to be impossibly large, casting its shadow over every conceivable patch of space. They didn't need active radar to know they were surrounded on all sides. Before they had time to think, a distant, unnerving screeching grew rapidly closer, and a half dozen small ships became visible in the distance, approaching the Falcon at an alarming speed. Some kind of fighters, yelled Lando. He started to reach for the main throttle before remembering that it was futile. Old instincts. We still have a few tricks up our sleeve. Chewie, work on restoring the main power with Lando. Han turned to Luke. Kid, ready for a trip down memory lane? All right. And yeah, we could stop there if you have anything. If you're ready to go.
No, I wrote my notes like, first of all, I love that they're gonna fight like they did in A New Hope, which is dope. Don't get cocky. And I just wrote in my notes that I like that you have some sort of focus on the friendship of Han and Luke, which is not super well explored. I think that in my remembrance of the EU, the focus with Han was much more on his relationship with Leia, which I always thought was interesting, but the friendship, like Luke and Han really went through shit from the very beginning. And when you think about them meeting in Mos Eisley and stuff like that, they have a huge history with each other. So to explore that more as they get old and test their own loyalties to each other is really cool. So
thanks, dude. Yeah, that was something that I always loved in the original trilogy. Those moments, right? They first meet on Tatooine, or them fighting, them sort of doing the whole Hoth thing, them fighting back to back on the sail barge, or reuniting, them fight their last campaign together in Endor, in the woods in Endor before they get split up. Those are always my favorite moments, and I love the dynamic between sort of the sort of Scarless hothead and the sort of more staid, once like farm boy craving adventure to the more staid Jedi Knight as he's maturing, and the love between them, even though they're so different from each other, but that friendship, that fast friendship. So that's something I really want to see in the sequels. See them in their older ages, still having that same dynamic, still having adventure. And that's another thing too. Like, I think that's something and I think that's something that the sequel trilogy missed out on, is I wanted to make sure there was beats of fun along the way. Don't get too heavy, don't get too emotional. We love the emotion, we love the acting, we love the odds that they're up against, the good versus evil, but don't forget to have fun. It's Star Wars. That's what we were in for as kids.
Also, don't forget to put Han and Luke together at least one time.
At least one time. So that was a big... Yeah, I know. What were they thinking?
It wouldn't have mattered in Episode 7 if they never met, if Han wasn't killed in Episode 7, which is... Then they would have eventually gotten together. It's probably Harrison Ford's fault, ultimately.
Yeah.
When you really think about it, I'm sure it is probably his fault.
That didn't help. Didn't help. All right, so next chapter, Kyle.
Yeah.
Here's how we start.
Okay.
Lord Geist, we have incoming ships. A crackling, synthesized voice replied from behind a dark mask, much higher pitched and electrical than the bassy intonations of Vader or Kylo Ren. Very good, General. Even sooner than expected. Let them through and monitor them. We'll strike at the opportune moment. Before then, stay hidden. I'm almost picturing like an EV-99 sort of intonation. Very electrical, a little higher pitched. Obviously the voice is synthesized.
The torture droid. That's the torture droid, right?
Yeah, the torture droid at Jabba's.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So picturing something like that, which would be kind of a neat, because again, Geist has the Vader-esque outfit. I think it's dark gray as opposed to black, but she still wears that same getup. So to have a different voice, have a different take on that same look, thought that
it's cool.
kind of fun. The tall, slender figure rose and glided across the dark room, arriving before a towering statue sculpted from a black glass-like material. The monument to Darth Vader stood about 20 feet high. The likeness posed with his arms crossed defiantly. Darth Geist stood for a moment, looking up into the face of the sculpture, before silently exiting the chamber. Geist knew that the trap would work. Striding down a series of corridors, the Sith Lord considered how easy it would be to ensnare these foes, capitalizing on their anger, letting them handicap themselves with their rage. It was a fortunate surprise that the solo boy stumbled upon that fleet of omens. It was time for the Tempest to reveal itself now, and the timing was perfect. After long years of waiting, playing the patiently stalking spider, finally ready to eliminate those tangled in their carefully threaded web. We'll find out what the omens, capital O, are shortly.
Okay.
The avenging Jedi were easy to predict. They would jump from spaceport to spaceport looking for any information regarding what they suspected to be a slowly reshaping galactic empire. The simple fools. What waited for them would be far worse than the impotent fragments of a defeated empire futilely seeking revenge. It was laughable. With Vader's demise, the Tempest had long been rudderless. The only weakness in their plan had been not accounting for the loss of its creator. But it was time to bring the Vision on course. Time to do what they were always meant to do, crush the Republic. Pulling out a small comlink, Geist issued a brief command, "Prepare my fighter." All right.
Excellent.
Now we jump to another hero. Maybe this was the place. Jyn took off her helmet and set it down on the console controls. In a series of fluid motions, she removed her gloves and flight harness and ended the ritual with checking for her lightsaber, which hung from her belt. She hastily brushed the hair from her eyes with her hand, her face beaded with sweat. The young Jedi leapt down from her X-Wing, her dark cloak flowing behind her. She threw the black hood over her head. Gray and Takahashi followed right behind, already hooded themselves. The threesome slinked through the jungle foliage, moving cautiously but swiftly. All right, now Takahashi is the character that I talked about, I think, during our episode 8 episode, which is sort of a Jyn loyalist, one of the ones that decided to break off from Luke and go avenge Owen with Jyn. He's the swordsman without force powers. He's just a very precocious swordsman, but doesn't have any force wielding strengths. Okay, so that's Taki, or Takahashi, Taki for short. They had narrowed down their search to about 6 different spaceports on 6 different worlds. Maybe this was the place. They arrived upon a clearing and stared out into the expanse before them, a sprawling junkyard, and on the far side a bustling city. Jyn stood up from the edge of the brush and started to walk out into the open, but Gray put out a stocky arm to stop her, ever the bodyguard. "Jyn, wait, we need to be careful. Let me and Taki go first." Takahashi responded, quickly nodded in affirmation, and putting a hand on the saber hilt strapped across his back, he led Gray out into the scrapyard clearing, crouching low as they walked. Okay. Jyn started to follow her friends, clearly annoyed, her glaring eyes giving way her growing lack of patience. She tugged at the saber hilt slung to her side and jumped in front of her well-meaning comrades. "You two worry too much. Come on, I'm leading this search." Gray and Taki looked at each other and shrugged, allowing Jyn to take point. They both knew better than to argue. As they continued to make their way through the towering mountains of scrap and junk, nobody noticed that they were being watched by more than one set of eyes. Okay, so now we set up Luke and his contingent, the old school heroes, the baddies, and Jyn and her posse, off on, breaking away from Luke and looking for revenge. Right? Everything clear so far?
Everything's clear.
Okay.
I've been kind of getting lost in my own mind because your writing is so. You're taking the moment to flesh out scenes.
Yes.
The wiping of the brow, the checking of the lightsaber. So it's very illustrative in my mind. So I'm seeing it.
Oh,
so,
good,
yeah,
dude.
Yeah.
Hopefully the description works, and hopefully it's character building too. Since we don't have any other means, we're just telling a story off the page. Hopefully, it builds those characters up in your mind, the personalities, and all of that. Now, I wrote in a little thing here that I wanted to make sure I did, because one thing I sort of lamented in past episodes, and we've talked about with the sequel trilogy, is the dropping of the ball, as I see it, and I think as you see it, Kyle, with the Knights of Ren. How those characters, it would have been cool to see. Get a little more of these bad guys, this group of bad guys, Kylo's basically lieutenants, Kylo Ren's lieutenants, and see if we could get a little more. And we never really got anything from those guys, and they fascinated me. So definitely. I wanted to make sure I explored Darth Geist's Tempest a little bit. So
Wise.
I thought this would be a good way to insert this scene here. From here, I want to check in with the kids back at Luke's academy. In other words, the young Jedis that decided not to go along with Jin on this mission. They were, maybe younger, maybe they just wanted to stay more loyal to Luke. Different personality types. I guess really, essentially the less hot-headed types. And the trainees that remained loyal to Luke, that Luke decides to leave them back at home when he goes off on his adventure, unwilling to endanger them. Originally, I thought that maybe he would take this contingent with him, but then I realized it doesn't really make sense for him to take maybe the younger, the less hardened types. They're not proper Jedis, even though some of them are pretty powerful. So I thought it made sense for him to, be protective of them and just kind of leave them behind as he went on his mission with Lando and Leia and Han. Or just Leia and Chewie. Leia's not involved yet. Leia's still back there too. So this was a good opportunity for Darth Geist with his Tempest, without Geist himself, track them down and attack them, absolutely trouncing them in battle on their home turf. They come, they kick the shit out of them, they destroy the temple, but they don't mortally wound anybody, and they're obviously not out for kills. So apparently they kind of swoop through, beat the shit out of everybody, and then leave. Apparently it could be ascertained that they're testing them in some way. So they come through, we get to see them in action. I'm thinking they're dressed in white. I'm thinking they're helmetless.
I like
so you could actually see who they are. They're not masked like their leader. And I thought it would be good to also get a sense of what Luke's more devoted pupils, Triss, Tress, and Tross, the Jedi triplets, and then the character that I talked about in the last episode, I think, I'm calling her Charlie, who's the little girl who has really acute pyrokinetic powers. Acute yet uncontrollable pyrokinetic powers and force shields and stuff like that. Very, very powerful. Arguably maybe the most powerful of the whole trainee contingent, but she just doesn't know how to wield it yet. So I thought it would be cool to get a taste of what she could do and a few of the others. So that would, and
that's
at the
awesome.
same
I love
time,
this.
getting a taste of the Tempest and what they're about, and also realizing like a less lethal or a less sort of aggressive foe than we've seen in the past. Like Darth Maul was murderous, Vader was murderous. All these enemies that we've seen in the past, Sith, the Emperor, they were just sort of like this unstoppable, but this unstoppable evil. But there's some sort of there's a different look with the Tempest that we're starting to get of restraint and testing and feeling them out and what exactly is going on here. So it makes you question the enemy a little bit too.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I'm so glad that you put them in white, because the whole black and white, or just, obviously the stormtroopers were white and all of that, but
yeah,
thinking more about Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow, where they kind of wore the opposite colors that you might expect, and it made it interesting. Yeah,
dating back to like the Wild, or even like Black Knights. I was going to say the Wild West with good cowboys wearing, the sheriff wearing white, and the thieves and the bandits wearing black. So yeah, it kind of stands on its head a little bit, which I think is kind of fun. All right, so let me continue here. So we're into the 4th chapter now, and we're back to Luke, Chewie, Lando, and Han. Just like one of his most memorable adventures in the Millennium Falcon many years earlier, Luke found himself sitting in one of the gun battery seats, readying himself to take out enemy fighters. Han shouted down from the Top Gun installment, "Luke, shut off the comm links and targeting computer. We'll need all the power for the guns." Remember, they're on like backup power. For some reason, they lost power. It's actually due to something that the Tempest is doing, but we'll explain that later. Here they come. Luke started to feel giddy again, like a kid again, young rebels with nothing to lose. A pack of fighters swept into view, moving at such a rapid clip that they appeared as a mere crimson blur before bolting out of sight again. I thought regular TIE interceptors were fast. What are these things? Han's usual lighthearted delivery was tinged with actual concern. His friend's uncharacteristic tone is what snapped the veteran Jedi back to reality. Luke responded, trying to figure out a strategy. Luke and Han tried desperately to put up a fight, but they were severely outmatched. The TIE Maelstroms were eating away at the Falcon's remaining shields, and they were powerless to flee. their auxiliary energy almost fully depleted. Then Luke had an idea. He tipped the remaining power to Han's gun installment, and clasping his hands together, allowed himself to fall into a state of deep meditation. The TIE Maelstroms continued their onslaught, spinning and shape-shifting, changing their attack patterns with each new formation, impossible to defend or to counter. So remember the TIE Maelstroms have, like, if you picture a traditional TIE fighter, they have 3 of those spherical fuselages. And they're interchangeable. So they could stack across horizontally, they could go vertically, they could go back. And that one, they're actually 2 of those fuselages are cockpits, but one of them is like this giant Vulcan cannon that could be repositioned and spun, shoot from any direction, it could shoot backwards. So it's a TIE fighter on steroids, basically. And of course, super quick.
Good new toy.
Yeah, that would be fun, right? That'd be kind of cool. Lando and Chewie tried in vain to find a way to restore the Falcon's primary power, but it was useless. They were completely paralyzed. Han bellowed from his gun pod, "Kid, I'm losing power here." Luke, as if awakening from a dream, opened his eyes and stretched his palms outward towards their attackers. And then, one by one, he froze each enemy ship in place as it came into view and pulled it apart, as if he was plucking the legs off a tiny, powerless insect. One by one, the TIE Maelstroms fell away, rendered useless, circling into space, violently melting into balls of blue light. A fireworks display for the small, dumbstruck crew aboard the Millennium Falcon. Hidden not too far off, another party watched as well, with growing interest, observing from the shadows and considering their own plan of attack. All right, so again, there's another enemy unlooked for, sort of hiding in the shadows that we'll meet.
Okay.
All right, so now we go back to Jyn and her group, Gray and Taki. Jyn led her friends through the scrapyard, trying to remember to keep a deliberate and careful pace, but increasingly motivated by her anger and ready to throw caution to the wind. She had come for revenge, or for some information that would lead her to it, and she felt like she was getting close now. Gray and Takahashi followed Jyn, sticking to their friend like shadows, unblinking in their dedication, ready to lay down their lives at a moment's notice. The noises of the city beyond the junkyard grew closer and louder now, but one voice, electrical and cold, suddenly rose above all the other sounds. "You've been searching for something, Jyn Solo." The 3 Jedi turned to see a silhouetted figure standing above them, perched upon a stack of jagged scrap metal at least 30 feet high. Moving, as if being controlled by a single brain, the Jedi threesome ignited their lightsabers in unison. Their glares were met with a gentle, metallic-sounding laughter, cascading from above, barely perceptible at first, but slowly building before suddenly ceasing. The dark form was then instantaneously standing right before them, also hooded in black robes, tall but slender, impossibly fast. Gray and Takahashi took a step back in surprise, the mysterious figure suddenly standing less than 3 feet from them now. But Jyn stepped forward, her fury amplified, the taste of blood in her mouth. Somehow she knew this was Owen's murderer. She felt it unmistakably. "Who are you?" Jyn insisted, her fists balled up at her sides, her knuckles drained of their color. The hooded stranger ignored the question. "What have we here? A pre-Vader Sith devotee, a swordsman with no force powers, and a little girl." Jin's lightsaber, pulsing green in the twilight, twitched almost reflexively, just for a microsecond, as if itself taking issue with the stranger's insult. The young Jedi's rage reached a crescendo, and she struck out at the stranger with a wide arc of her lightsaber. The mysterious figure stepped out of the way, just enough for the fiery saber to miss her face by a fraction of an inch. As the weapon continued its downward arc, she grabbed it by its glowing hot blade, and stood there, holding it that way, seemingly amused, before tossing it aside with no real sense of urgency. Jin's lightsaber hit the ground. It continued to hum and glow there. The dark stranger resumed her stance, resting both arms behind her back. She said nothing more. The young Jedis tried to navigate their shock. Finally, Takahashi, his light blue saber glowing in his hand, leapt up and plunged his weapon forward in a swift stabbing motion. The dark hooded figure reached down, picked up Jin's still ignited saber by the blade again, and deflected Taki's blow, sending his saber spinning into a mound of debris many yards off. The mysterious figure then partially bowed to Jyn, gesturing out to return her saber, still holding the weapon by its scorching hot blade. "I am Darth Geist. Jin regained her senses. With a motion of her hand, she sent her lightsaber sailing upwards out of Geist's grasp, and with a flurry of hand commands started using her faithful saber to fight, never needing to actually touch the weapon. So she's using her force powers to actually use the weapon, like a sword, like a lightsaber, but she's not touching it. Geist reached each hand to her opposite forearms and pulled her own sabers from under each wrist. So she has her saber stored under here, and she just pulls them out. The hilts were slender, but the lightsabers themselves were the same blood red as her old masters. Geist spun and sent each saber out in a wide arc, one high, one low, and Jin dodged just in time. Then the young Jedi vanished. She appeared and quickly vanished again. So here I have what we talked about, Jin's precocious teleporting powers as she fights. And this whole thing where she's doing it against Geist now, but we also find out that she's never done this in battle before. Now, she's done it training, she's done it horsing around, but she's never done this in battle before. So this whole back and forth, she's doing this teleporting thing, but it's really not having any effect. Geist seems relatively unfazed by all the feints. She's just kind of rolling along with it, like she knows everything that's going to happen before it happens, each move in turn. Jin finally reappeared in a violent flash, startling even her friends, 4 feet above Geist's head. Holding her saber high with both hands, she slashed downward with all her strength, every ounce of her fury channeling into her arms, intending the death strike she had been dreaming of, the killing blow dedicated to her fallen brother. So this is Jin. This is one of the most powerful Jedi, giving it everything she possibly has. Geist blocked the incoming saber with her own glowing weapon, the one in her left hand. Now, don't forget, she fights with two red sabers. Her defense was effortless. Still standing, completely upright, the lightsaber in her other hand humming benignly at her side. Jin bounced back and crashed to the ground, disarmed. Her saber stuck into the dried clay beside a pile of scrap. She tried to scramble to her feet, but realized her wrist was injured. Gray and Takahashi moved as one, rushing in for the attack, but Geist merely turned her head to look at his charging enemies, and the young Jedis were thrown backwards, a powerful force push, all without lifting a hand. So she did it with a look. Jin held her wrist and screamed into the communicator on her arm. On cue, 3 X-Wing rose above the stacks of rusting iron, firing ceaselessly at Darth Geist. So these are the other Jedi that they brought along, but Jin knew enough to sort of hide them in the shadows and kind of call them up as a contingency plan in case they got in trouble. Who somehow stood her ground as she powered down her own sabers. She looked up defiantly at the attacking ships as they swooped in to retrieve the young Jedi. Her hood was blown off, revealing a dark gray mask fashioned in the likeness of Darth Vader himself. The 3 X-Wing pilots, also the children of Luke's academy, signaled to each other. Their passengers aboard, they flew up above the city and jumped to light speed, vanishing. Geist decided to let them go. It would be better not to murder all of them just yet. All right. So we're making good progress here. Is there anything that's unclear? Anything
No,
you think I missed?
I was just writing down. I love, because I visited a little bit of mine as well, this idea of just this kind of cult of Darth Vader, this like real affinity for his power and his prestige, and maybe the stories that are told after his death, and maybe the lies that are told about him as well. I'm glad that that's in yours, because I think
irresistible,
that's like
isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
One of the things that the actual sequel trilogy, I think did well. I think they could have went further with that, but I always liked that, where it was sort of like, yeah, this legend to be worshipped. And even though Kylo was, getting it wrong, or didn't maybe essentially know the whole story, apparently. But yeah, I dug that too.
Yeah, I like that. She has a helmet like Vader's, for instance. I really like that.
All right, Kyle, you ready to keep going?
Yeah, let's go. Okay,
when we cut back to Luke, Han, Chewie, and Lando, our heroes let the Falcon drift, still lacking any kind of power. They are surrounded by some sort of massive ships levitating in the darkness. But there's no sign of an impending attack. Luke reaches out with the Force and realizes they are beset by about 200 vessels of some kind, each of them apparently hundreds of miles long. Okay, so these enormous, unthinkably enormous things. A fleet of an impossible size, each ship an invincible behemoth. As Luke continues to analyze this mysterious flotilla, he is astounded to recognize that each one of these ships are actually living beings of some kind. It's unclear, but he's reaching out with the Force and getting something back that says these are not machines. As the Falcon continues to drift, our heroes realize that these are massive organic life forms outfitted with cybernetics and technological components and weaponry. A biomechanical fleet possibly able to be controlled and manipulated through the Force, although it's not completely clear yet. Definitely wanted to, in writing this or coming up with this idea from the beginning, I wanted to explore something that's often done in anime where it's like in a sci-fi story in anime, it doesn't necessarily have to, these spaceships or these fleets are sometimes cybernetic or sometimes bioengineered in some way. And I never see that done really well in actual live action science fiction. So maybe try to take a chance and see what this is all about, especially when imbued with Force powers and just, well, I'll save the rest. Luke desperately, oh wait, so hold on. Okay, so they try to wrap their heads around this unimaginable realization. Luke desperately reaches out to communicate with the fleet, but receives no clear response. Suddenly, though, the Falcon's power is restored with no real explanation, no tangible explanation, but not before a new squadron of TIE Maelstroms move into attack. An attempted communication from Leia is broken up and garbled just then, ultimately unintelligible, but she sounds desperate. Completely outgunned by the superior new TIE fighter tech, the Falcon must rely on its speed, attempting to outrun the Maelstroms. As they bolt, Han and Chewie reveal a new surprise they concocted for their beloved ship: launchable countermeasures devised to intercept heat-seeking ordnance. So I thought it would be cool. It's always cool to see the Falcon with new tricks, right? Sure. I thought it would be cool for Han and Chewie to always have something new up there. They have this old ship instead of trading it in for something contemporary, but they're constantly infusing it with these new powers, you know? And if you think of the Falcon, its biggest asset is its speed. You have those giant turbines in the back, and you can't really alter that or modify that. So in keeping the speed, what can you do? Now they have this giant heat register in the back, which is not good for dogfighting, close quarters. So what can you do? So they have countermeasures to sort of deflect any heat-seeking ordnance coming in.
It's a good point, too, that they could certainly afford any ship they want at this point.
Yeah. But so they stay with this, right? This devotion to Millennium Falcon. So it makes sense. And also, just kind of that like old gearhead type mentality that Chewie and Han have. Like you could see them like they sort of relish these like kind of half-assed modifications and stuff like that. And I don't know, it's always a joyful thing to see the Falcon unleash a new surprise, right?
Absolutely.
Like even in what sequel movie? No, actually, that was in Solo, right? Where they do the thing where Lando tips up the Falcon and hits the TIE fighter into the other TIE fighter.
Right.
Yeah. Could be as simple as that. Or,
cool.
The square radar dish, anything. It's just fun to see something, it adds to the authenticness, the genuineness of the world to see a little nod like that.
I agree. It's its own character. It's an important character.
Totally. The Falcon is its own character for sure. Okay, so Chewie fires off the countermeasures, which buys the Force enough time to escape from their predators this time. Just then, a squadron of Alliance ships pops up on radar, and Lando attempts to communicate. There is no response from the group of X-Wings, A-Wings, and B-Wings, but the squadron speeds up behind the Falcon. The gang attempts another broadcast to their ally pilots before the Falcon is rattled by a blast, and then another. Chewie, activate rear shields. Are they firing on us? Another garbled transmission from Leia back at base. I have a bad feeling about this, Han says. They jump to light speed, living to fight another day, but realizing that their trouble just got a whole lot worse. All their suspicions could have never confirmed this reality. All right?
Okay.
I'd say we're probably about 2/3 of the way there.
Yeah, it's good. It's a lot of visuals.
Yeah,
nice.
All right, so you could see this in your mind's eye.
That's the way you work. Yeah.
Okay. All right, good.
I'm more of a lore writer, so like you'll see the difference between. Well, people already know because we've done this.
Yeah, but that'll be a fun contrast. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
All right, so returning to home base, the Falcon crew is instructed that they will not be allowed to land. Just as they feared, something was very wrong. Yet another transmission from Leia and her young bridge crew aboard the Alliance flagship Hope One. Still laced with static and partially incomprehensible, they heard enough this time. The Total Alliance had placed a bounty on the heads of both Luke and Jin, and there was no explanation why. Meanwhile, Jin, Gray, and Takahashi and their contingent of Jedi trainees are attacked by a Total Alliance squadron as well. So it's important to say here, so in case this isn't clear, and in case I don't explain it later, which I might not, the whole ruse of, or rumors or legends built up of a sort of reshaping empire, that the empire was sort of rebuilding in the shadows and were coming to amass a new army and coming to exact revenge, turns out to be something completely purported by the Total Alliance in order to send Luke and his trainees and Han and Leia and that contingent out on missions, not only to distract them, but essentially to get them killed in a way that wouldn't look suspicious. And the explanation with using all these bounty hunters and stuff, what they would do is they would send Luke out and Han and Lando, whoever was involved on these missions, and they would put bounty hunters on them in order to take them out, or when they were, doing these far-flung missions on these far-flung worlds, essentially deciding that Luke and his whole array were just too much of a threat. They had to go. So this enormous betrayal, right? So it's important to say that, and now it's coming to a head. Now it's actually coming to pass. Utterly confused, the young warriors try to flee but are cornered and are forced to engage. The Jedis achieve a joyless victory. One-time allies now dead in their wake. So the kids actually come in, this squadron of X-Wings or whatever it was that are pressing them. The young Jedis are forced to fight and destroy the Total Alliance ships. Left to wonder what's happening, seemingly surrounded by enemies on all sides. Astonished and exhausted, Jin and her team ponder their next move. Luke, Han, Lando, and Chewie attempt to make another jump in the Falcon, but are intercepted by a Total Alliance armada. A battle ensues, and the Falcon crew are severely outnumbered and outgunned. The Falcon sustains serious damage, and Lando is killed in the battle. Okay. But they're all aboard the Falcon, which I thought would be a very emotional way, rather than being in 3 or 4 different ships, to have one of your friends die when you're in the same cabin or the same cockpit. I thought that would be kind of an interesting thing to explore in the film. Mere seconds before losing the last of their shields, Leia intervenes in the Hope One, backed by a group of old friends like Akbar, Wedge, and Nien Nunb. So there's a small contingent that stays loyal to Leia, along with her own sort of trainees, which are more like frigate, not frigate, but frigate-based, crew.
Right. Frigate.
The Hope One and its small, scrappy group of escort ships and fighters rescue the Falcon, and they all jump to lightspeed. They reconvene on the long-abandoned rebel base at Yavin, where they can lick their wounds and get to the bottom of what's going on. So they're completely mystified at this point. And mourning, obviously. Based on intel gathered from some of Leia's young spies, it turns out that the Total Alliance has decided that the ever-growing power of the Skywalker family has become too large a threat, and their lineage needs to be ended for good. A plan that apparently was long in the making. Reeling from this betrayal, and with Jin and her young friends still missing, our heroes consider a plan of action. Surrounded by the powerful Total Alliance on one side and the impossible might of this new supposed Imperial army on the other, Luke, Han, and Leia try to develop some sort of strategy against all odds. It was only a matter of time before the Total Alliance tracked their small uprising to Yavin, so they had to move fast. Okay, so they have what they don't know isn't the Empire, but this Empire in its heyday, like army on one side, and the Total Alliance, which is now this new turned Galactic Empire on the other side. So they're kind of between a rock and a hard place, really, essentially in more trouble than we've ever seen these characters before. They realize now that the rumors and stories of a rebuilding empire were completely fabricated, designed as a distraction from the real enemy who waited in plain sight. Any actual Imperial faction remaining were merely splinter terrorist groups at best, toothless and powerless. The countless bounty hunters were all working for the Total Alliance as Jedi assassins, essentially. Not as trackers trying to smoke out avenging Imperial officers, as they were all this time led to believe. Okay, so a huge ruse, huge betrayal at hand here. And there was another threat out there now, too, just as great as the Total Alliance, if not greater, as you know. They didn't know who was responsible or what drove them, but their war machine was undefeatable. Giant, ancient creatures modified for mass destruction. They had seen it with their own eyes. An enemy impossible to defeat. There would be no weak spot to exploit this time. No long shot, no hope. So we'll see this better as we close the story later, but I thought it would be really cool to develop an enemy so powerful, just throwing the scales of balance completely out of whack, so overpowered essentially, that there really is no way to destroy it. The only way to really win or walk away unscathed is if the enemy decides not to use it. So what, so the stakes are, you're going to go down. So go down without a fight or go down with a fight. But essentially, against all odds, you're going to go down. And what do our heroes do? What do these heroes do that we know so well in the face of that, in the face of that realization? Which is a big, I thought something different for this group where it's like, they're not going to exploit a weak spot this time. There's none of that, Sure. And how is this going to come to pass?
I like that. That's interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Yeah. Now, in retrospect, going back and working on this with you, Kyle, through 3 different chapters, I sort of lament the timing a little bit, the spacing, letting things breathe, how I spaced out the reveals and stuff like that. I wouldn't have done so much in the last episode. So there's a little bit of retconning going on. And I think that's the hardest thing about doing these things. So in a perfect world, I would have made these reveals more stepped out and more balanced over the course of the 3 episodes. But so there's a lot to squeeze in, but hopefully it doesn't feel too sped along, No,
I don't think so. It's pretty dense, but
it's dense. It is dense.
That's okay though.
And, maybe a little bit indulgent, but
well, that's the idea. That's the entire idea of this exercise. So I don't.
Yeah,
mind that.
Definitely. I think that's true too. All right.
Why not? Yeah.
So, okay. So Luke, Han, and Leia, of course, decided that it would be best to go after Jyn at this point, to come to her aid. If they were nearing the end, then they would face that end together as one. They had to find her. There was no more time to waste. So then we cut back to Jyn, says at the beginning of this chapter, we're far in now, chapter 8. Jyn knew it wouldn't be long. Sure enough, a Total Alliance squadron had detected them, and they were catching up fast. The heroes, crammed into their 3 X-Wings, managed to escape into the atmosphere of a nearby planet, a mountainous terrain covered with lakes, streams, and lush vegetation. Jyn and her friends swoop down to the surface and hide their fighters among the expanse of tall tropical flowers and thick vines. The 6 young Jedi stayed hidden among the flora and watched the pursuing Alliance ships as they scoured the surface. The Alliance A-Wings and X-Wings hunted relentlessly, finally zeroing in on their prey. The fighters opened fire on the young Jedis, raining down a hail of lasers and torpedoes. The children tried to evade their attackers, but they lack any way to fight back effectively, their own ships now obliterated, smoldering piles of wreckage smoking among the tropical foliage. The line of enemy ships pressed closer, flying just above the tree line, unleashing their barrage of heavy fire. Then, a purple flash, followed by a line of fire engulfing the Total Alliance squadron. All of them. Every fighter vanishing into oblivion, reduced to ash. Instantaneously. The fires burned off to reveal the sparks glimmering on the horizon, but getting steadily closer. In a matter of seconds, the TIE Maelstroms came screaming into view, their triple fuselages spinning wildly, red-hot cannons trailing steam. Jyn counted 7 of them as they bolted overhead, preparing to circle back around yet again. The Maelstroms let loose a volley of blasts on the second pass, impacting all the scrambling Jedi trainees, sending up millions of tropical flower petals to rain down like confetti. Jyn didn't want to die this way. To lose to her brother's murderer, to leave this world without her family, without her revenge, without explanation. Jyn, Gray, and Taki, the rest of their group, backed up to each other and ignited their sabers, preparing for one last fight. They prayed and meditated, focusing solemnly on this one final battle. But the screeching TIE fighters held their fire, and then they were all thrown into darkness. With an earth-shattering sonic tremble, countless massive ships entered into the planet's atmosphere from hyperspace, all in unison. They blocked the rays of the sun completely, burying this world in deep shadow, not a single sliver of light allowed through. The children had heard of the massive Imperial Star Destroyers of old, but whatever hovered above them now could easily dwarf those ancient ships. A lightsaber cracked and flashed red just feet from the young warriors, and then another, one by one, crimson sabers igniting around them. They were surrounded. The young Jedi fighters stayed silent and tuned their hearing, trying to use sound to their advantage, but their enemies made none. Finally, one voice shattered the eerie quiet, that same detached electrical style, cold and cruel. You have a new enemy, Jyn Solo. You and your master have been betrayed. Jyn thought of her brother, and her anger rose in her. She spoke defiantly, her rage clinging to every word. You murdered my brother. Once you die at my hand, this world can burn. So we're getting a taste of where Jyn is emotionally. Don't forget, this is we see Jyn on past adventures with Luke in episode 8. We see their relationship. We see a more lighthearted character. This is a 13-year-old like push to this murderous rage. It's pretty emotional. It's a pretty emotional thing to bear witness to. Gray stood with his shoulder pressed to his old friend. He understood her thirst for vengeance, but her words made him shudder with grief all the same. She was becoming numb, blind to all things but her revenge, living for nothing else. Falling to the dark side even as they stood there in their last moments, this was the final proof. Gray's anger filled him, the corruption of his beloved stirring his emotions into a wild storm in his heart. Now don't forget, Gray is the interesting character that kind of models himself after Darth Maul. You know, he's obsessed with the dark side. He has the horn implants. He's obsessed with the aesthetic of the dark side, although he's a good dude. So his rage is getting kindled by his best friend falling to the dark side and knowing that that's how it's going to end for them, with his friend falling before she dies. So that's igniting something in his own heart. He leapt forward, his lightsaber flashing violently, and swung at Geist with all of his hatred. The Sith Lord stepped aside and, raising both of her own sabers, slashed Gray behind each leg, dropping the sturdy warrior to his knees. So again, not attacking with a killing blow. Attacking effectively, easily, but not a killing blow. Delicate flower petals arced into the air and cascaded down. Takahashi didn't wait. Just as Gray fell, the young swordsman sprung with a powerful thrust of his saber, clashing with Geist, and initiating a battle, red and blue lightsabers showering the floor with sparks, igniting miniature fires all around them as they fought. As he locked sabers with Taki, Jyn teleported behind Geist, but Geist seemed to anticipate the maneuver and had his right hand ready for Jin's sneak attack, blocking her with a troubling ease. Which is basically the story with fighting Geist. There's really no way, apparently, to get an upper hand on this character. The other Jedi looked on intensely, too, desperate for a way to break into the battle, but not finding an opening to come to Jyn and Taki's aid, feeling utterly outmatched. So here you have these powerful Jedi trainee. They're kids, but they feel like they're not even worthy of stepping into this fight. Darth Geist stayed a step ahead of his two opponents. He wondered if he'd need to actually make an effort. The rest of the red lightsabers remained humming in the dark, perfectly still, belonging to unseen warriors waiting patiently in the shadows. They wouldn't be needed. Luke, Leia, Han, and Chewie make their way to Cloud City, where a celebration is held to honor the life of Lando Calrissian.
Nice.
Thousands attend to pay homage to the fallen general, ambassador, and loyal friend.
Is Lobot there?
Lobot is there. Lobot is there. I figure it's Lobot. I figure maybe we'll get a little nostalgic taste. We'll see some Ugnaughts.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? Maybe a silver protocol droid.
a black cloud car pilot and a white cloud car pilot.
You gotta have both.
Just like the Empire Strikes Back toys. I loved that they did that. That's crazy.
It's the best. It's so
That's
good.
so far
and
ahead of its. Not so far of its.
And
time.
unlike my figures, the black cloud car pilot will not be missing a leg.
Yeah, I was gonna say you had the black cloud car.
Yeah,
pilot,
I had
right?
both.
Oh,
but for some reason, the black cloud car pilot was missing a leg. I don't know how that happened. Him and Tatooine
the vengeance
Luke with the
vengeance of
glued on
Tommy
head like this.
Yeah,
Still glued on. Still glued on. I don't know why Mom glued it on like that, but it stayed. He's very curious. My Tatooine Luke. He's very inquisitive all the time with his head. Okay, so, and I figure, the loyal contingent, Wedge, Nien Akbar. I don't know if General Madine is in there somewhere, right?
That'd be awesome.
Mothma, all the usual suspects. Sure. They can't break off and they can't be the evil Total Alliance, so they got to stay true, those characters. So it's a somber event for our foursome and a day full of mixed emotions, nostalgia and warm feelings blending with the sadness of their loss. Many old friends are met during this time of remembrance and reflection. As our heroes prepare to depart, they find an unwelcome surprise docked directly beside the Falcon on its landing pad. Oh, a warning. Unpleasant memories flooding back to them. A ghost from their past, the infamous ship, Slave One.
I knew you were going to say that. All right, very interesting.
All right.
Okay, all right.
So real nostalgia, even seeing the Slave One and the Falcon docked at this is shades of 1980 right here. A flurry of sudden blaster fire from behind them confirmed their fears. They were under attack, and the man holding the gun was none other than Boba Fett. So now we see Boba Fett. Again, what we saw was a glimpse of his silhouette in episode 8, sort of bailing Jin and Luke out. Untold reasons why, but now here's Boba Fett. After a lengthy firefight and fresh damage done to the newly repaired Falcon, Luke and Fett engage at close quarters, shades of their scuffle years prior above the Sarlacc pit. But now they're hovering around, above a bottomless pit, essentially. Luke gains the upper hand once again, Fett pinned to the ground, the Jedi's lightsaber poised mere inches from the bounty hunter's throat. Luke offers a deal to his old enemy. Help guide them to the shadowy enemy that Jin hunts for, and all debts will be settled. Now, it's sort of gathered that Fett knows about this whole Total Alliance ruse from the start, and knows that they're sicking, just from being a bounty hunter and being in that sphere, knowing that the Total Alliance was sicking bounty hunters on Luke and, his allies, and this whole thing was going on, but wanting to protect Luke because he wants Luke for himself. Not a bounty, but he wants to exact revenge. So what we saw with the bounty hunter in the previous episode where Boba Fett sort of takes out the bounty hunter that's about to take out Luke, there's some mysterious things going on with Boba Fett where he's obviously not a friend, but, he's been protecting Luke this whole time, and he knows more than they know as a result of all this stuff going on with the Total Alliance. So...
And this is the Boba Fett.
This is Boba Fett. This is Boba Fett, and this is confirmation in my world, in my Star Wars world, that he escaped from the Sarlacc pit. He's going to go after Luke and Han. Cool. He wants and Leia. He wants his revenge, and Lando. Obviously not Lando anymore, but he wants his revenge. So Fett reluctantly agrees, swearing to himself that he would murder Skywalker when all was said and done. So obviously still has a debt to pay back.
Do we get his helmet off?
No, I don't think so. Now, you haven't seen The Mandalorian yet.
No.
So, enough said. Okay, but not in my world. You don't see him with his helmet off in my world. As they approached the mountainous planet where Rey clashed with the evil faction that she sought, the Falcon and Slave One were pressed by those enormous black cruisers again, emerging from hyperspace all around them. So every time these impossibly massive ships just kind of appear out of hyperspace, and it's like this, uncounterable menace. There's no way to fight these things. Fett postures to attack, the Slave One bristling with weapons of every type, but Luke convinces him that they are far outgunned. He's seen these ships before. One of the gigantic cruisers fires an enormous laser beam, lighting up the sky and nearly splitting the Slave One in half. Fett and Luke plummet to the planet below, trailed by a massive flame. The Falcon follows behind. Jyn and her five faithful companions are bruised and battered, each of them incapacitated. Darth Geist standing victorious among the rubble and broken lightsabers. Geist turned off his weapons, reveling in his enemy's defeat. Okay? So you have Jyn, you have Grey, you have Taki. Everybody's kind of bruised and battered. You have the other three that were piloting the X-Wings earlier, so it's the 6 of them. He introduces the Tempest, his 6 lieutenants clad in white robes, each wearing an ivory-colored sort of breastplate. Geist laments cruelly, years of overdue vengeance, amounting only to this. Jyn sat amongst the dust and wreckage, holding her wrist, in agony more from the humiliation than from the physical pain. All of her friends injured and defeated, the distant sounds of engines, and then the Millennium Falcon soars into sight, showering the surface with laser blasts, Han's battle cry piercing the air. Luke and Boba Fett emerge, fighting back to back, the moment we were all waiting for, and both firing their blasters. So we have Luke, we have shades of Bespin Luke still using a gun.
Nice.
As Geist and the Tempest ignite their sabers and prepare for battle, a violent skirmish ensues. Luke wields his lightsaber, taking on Darth Geist, our hero getting lost in his thoughts of his father. Connections to the past, obviously from staring at this Vader-like enemy. Luke fought fiercely all the same. So Luke, maybe not a match for Geist, but at least in the early minutes, it looks like it's going to be a pretty evenly balanced fight, one-on-one fight.
Sure.
I was your father's pupil, Skywalker, the child he always longed to teach. Then Luke put it all together. In that moment of blurring lightsabers, interlocking, of ancient enemies and ancient misunderstandings, of family and disappointment and vengeance, a plan his father created many years ago. Wheels set in motion, impossible to stop. Never accounting for changes of heart, for dark becoming light, never accounting for regret. So again, this plan set in motion that once set in motion would never be able to be derailed. Even as Luke and Fett fought savagely, they knew they couldn't win. This invincible machine that Vader put in place 2 decades earlier was designed to crush all opposition, and that's precisely what it would do now, and Luke knew that. And he knew there was little value in telling of Vader's betrayal of the Emperor there right at the end of his father's rejection of the dark side, ultimately, in his final breaths, that tragedy would die with him. The idea that this was all for nothing. The Total Alliance fleet emerged out of hyperspace as if on cue. Thousands of ships filling the sky, preparing to rain down death. The largest cruisers and warships opened fire on the surface first, and hundreds of fighters and bombers then scrambled, buzzing like tiny stinging insects, swarms of X-Wings rocketing in their direction. So a new look for the X-Wing as bad guys, which I thought would be really interesting.
Definitely.
Okay, Kyle, we're almost done here. Yeah. Luke threw down his lightsaber and ran for his niece, cradled her in his arms and stroked her hair. In these last moments, he wanted to tell Jyn that he loved her. She embraced him back. Fett ignited his jetpack. With a nod to Luke, he flew off into the foliage to search for an escape. He still had a score to settle with Skywalker, but it would keep for now. So, Fett out. As Luke and his pupils watched, their old allies set themselves for the final attack, the heartbreaking betrayal nearly complete. So the Total Alliance pressing all of its force down and finally, committing the atrocity they had been gearing for a long time, apparently. But Geist raised his hand. Geist raised her hand, and suddenly a purple bolt, as wide as a Star Destroyer, tore through the Alliance flotilla, decimating almost every ship in the fleet, aside from a few scattered fighters. Every vessel was thoroughly annihilated, reduced to plumes of purple smoke. It was those enormous cybernetic cruisers, just one of them, to be precise. Unthinkable power, it would crush them all. Everybody watching was left in absolute awe. Then, Luke and his pupils were awash in a sea of sorrow, thinking of Han, Leia, Chewie, and the Falcon, a sadness too oppressive to shoulder, a loss too impossible to bear. So thinking the Falcon was part of that, getting caught in that enormous blast. But Han had other plans. The Falcon blasted through the purple mist and into full sight as a certain Wookiee growled victoriously. Han doing what Han always did best, surviving against all odds. Darth Geist approached Luke, handing the Jedi his lightsaber. A moment of realization, perhaps, maybe moved in some way by this unprecedented betrayal of his foe. Coming together in a face of new ancient enemies. In any event, coming together in the face of this new threat. In any event, ancient enemies coming together now in the face of new enemies. A strange but welcome turn. Geist helped Jin to her feet. He looked at her for a few seconds, nodded slightly, and led the Tempest back to their ships. As the TIE Maelstroms took off into the darkness of space, Luke pondered his position. They had a brand new enemy to fight, but maybe they also had a powerful new ally, an unexpected turning of tides yet again. The massive omens filling the sky above flickered briefly and then vanished, hurtling back into hyperspace, revealing the star-freckled heavens once again. A new conflict for our heroes, and a new hope. So one very important thing I wanted to do here, Kyle, was end it saying that there was going to be more. That this was only one thing that was definitive with the sequel trilogy that we actually got was that it's over for the legacy characters. There's going to be no more. This is saying that the story will continue and hopefully it'll be interesting. So that was one thing. My biggest lament was not incorporating the running AT-ATs that I really wanted to have it there. Like, how terrifying would it be to have AT-ATs that ran? So,
not
the only thing I couldn't sort of squeeze that in. But that's it, man. That's the end for Star Wars Episode 9.
I love it. I think it's great, and I feel like you deal with some of the same themes that I do. I won't ruin it, but specifically the idea that there's more than this trilogy to talk about. You'll see that. Oh, I can't wait. Mine's similar as well.
I'm so psyched
in that regard. But I wrote in my notes here, it's like, I love the ratcheting up of a war machine to the point where, like, it's unimaginable that a previous problem was ever a problem. In other words, like, you fought the Death Star and Grand Moff Tarkin and all of this, and it seems almost like nothing, even though that was a terminal and serious problem, planet destroying space station, basically. But it seems like almost quaint based on the things that you're dealing with later. And I like that, because that's the only way. It's the only way Star Wars really works in my mind. So
yes, true. Absolutely.
If you're doing it like this, if you're going in and telling very surgical stories, that's different. But if you're doing like these overarching themes, then it has to be in some way different or more serious than what has been dealt with in the past. Otherwise, it's just inherently anticlimactic. So I think you've totally nailed that aspect of it.
Thank you very much.
I love. And like I said, I love getting all the old heroes together. It's not something I do very much in mine. And the cultivator and all that's great. So that's great. It's good stuff, Dave.
Thank you, my friend.
Very well
Thank
done.
you. Here's the pen that ran out. I'm going to ritualistically throw it back.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. I love running out of pen. I love holding. It's like a lighter when I use a lighter all the way through and I throw it out. It's like, this is awesome.
So satisfying.
I love that. It is.
All right, regale us.
I was going to say, you know what I've never used all the way through is a whiteout thing. Like a whiteout. I've never like had a whiteout where it's like, I can't get any more whiteout out of the...
Really?
I don't think... it's dried up. But I don't know if I've ever used it all.
Oh, you've never revised storyboards before, my friend. Do you?
No.
Do you prefer the liquid whiteout, or do you prefer that tape, that weird tape stuff?
No. I like the liquid.
You go for the liquid whiteout.
Yeah, I like the liquid, that old school stuff.
I hear that.
I remember feeling almost like a big shot when you finally got your own whiteout in middle school. You know, it was almost like a forbidden thing you weren't allowed to have, and then suddenly it's like a calculator. Then suddenly, like, you're allowed to have this thing.
Absolutely. Not for elementary school, the whiteout.
Yeah,
kind of graduates to junior high, middle school.
Right.
Then
that's when you start using pen. Remember, like, using pens was a big deal? I always think about that too.
Of course.
As opposed to a pencil.
Number 2
All right,
pencil.
so Dig, I'll do what you did is I'll read my crawls and then I'll just catch everyone up on what's going on, and we'll move through this. So
cool.
And I haven't named my films. You guys can name them if you want, but the episode 7 for me says Luke Skywalker has vanished. In pursuit of a millennia-old Jedi secret, Skywalker has abandoned his post in the New Republic with the assistance of a shadowy corporation called Hail Systems. At the helm of Hail Systems is a religious prophet known only as Karen, a devotee of the Force's long-forgotten spiritual foundation. His military commander, General Hux, has reportedly closed in on their target with Skywalker's aid. Princess Leia, concerned about her brother's disappearance, dispatches Chewbacca and star pilot Poe Dameron to discover Luke's whereabouts. So it's worth noting, just to remind everyone, that one of the challenges, totally put on myself, there was no reason to do this, was I tried to take as much as I could in some way from the ones that exist, from 7, 8, and 9 as they exist. So some of the characters appear. I like Poe as a character. I think he's great. So take him, you take Phasma and kind of change her around a little bit, and others. So Finn. So no Rey, because Rey fucking is a loser and sucks. But all the other characters are interesting, have fundamental, she's like a Mary Sue. I don't want to, I'm not interested in that. It's bad storytelling. So that's number one. And then the second episode crawl says Megacorporation Hail Systems has identified its target. Force prophet Karen has uncovered a previously unknown far-flung planet teeming with Kyber, the most powerful natural substance in the universe. Unaware of the existential threat the colonization of this new planet represents, the New Republic continues to seek the missing war hero and Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker, who is apparently in league with Karen and his military leader, Commander Hux. Only through networking in the criminal underworld does the New Republic stand a chance of finding Luke and uncovering Hail Systems' intent. So just to kind of catch everyone up apart from that.
Yeah.
So Chewbacca and Poe work together now. Han, as we know, has been in this weird state of like a mental flux, which we find out is, well, we'll find out why. Coruscant exists, and it's the Republic capital in our world. Leia and Han are married and have twins, Jaina and Jason, just like in the novels.
Nice.
So that's important as well. Luke is in this, and Luke does reveal, I think, in the previous episode that he basically was corresponding with Vader after Vader died. Through the Force, and we see a lot of that in my trilogy of people using telepathy, Force telepathy with each other. And the planet of Kyber we now know is being called Kenobi. Part of the reason that, and we learned that in the last episode, I think part of the reason for that is obviously to an ode to Ben, but also to kind of throw off what anything sinister might be going on, because the name Kenobi, Obi-Wan Kenobi, is well regarded in our galaxy for obvious reasons. A heroic George Washington-like character. We know that the Millennium Falcon has been retired. The Centurion is kind of the new ship that they use. The Prophet is the name of the converted Star Destroyer that is the flagship of Hail Systems.
That's great.
Rieger the Hutt is played a role. He is the grandson of Jabba the Hutt and basically trades what he has learned about the Kyber planet for stuff, as people might remember from episode 8, from Endor. Hutt wants the technology from the second Death Star that apparently is left on Endor, and then trades the information that he knows for that technology. But we find out that the technology was there because he's afraid of Hail Systems and wants that kind of protection. So they use each other in that way. And I think that's basically it. Oh, so Han awakens in episode 8. He tells everyone he's going to look, as you might recall, for Poe and Chewie, but he's lying. He uses telemetry to go and follow Jason, who went to go be with Luke, as you might recall. Right. And Hale's armada orbits Kenobi. It's thousands and thousands of ships. So that's kind of all the things you need to know. I'm going to play with my ISO a little bit here, make it a little brighter. All right, so here's the crawl for the third untitled movie, episode 9.
Okay.
War is coming. Megacorporation Hail Systems has established dominion over a planet teeming with Kyber, the crystalline substance at the heart of the lightsaber and other Jedi technologies. And the potential of destruction in the galaxy has never been higher. Yet a new future is being promised by Hail Systems leader Karen. The power of the Force can be for everybody, for the good of all. Concerned about recent developments in a distant corner of the known galaxy, the Republic gathers to decide upon its response. Ellipsis. And then I've written 8 paragraphs like I've done the other times. So there's like 8 movements. So I'll read them in order. And this isn't in totality, but we can go through everything. And again, I'm more of a lore person than an action person. As I said in the previous ones, you're going to kind of have to fill in maybe some action here and there, although there's much more action in this one, I think.
Okay.
As the film begins, the Republic Senate is seen assembled in an immediately uproarious state. Various delegates let their voices be heard about the matter at hand. It's all their constituents can talk about. A planet full of Kyber, controlled by a corporation, assisted by the beloved Luke Skywalker in support of a seemingly religious pursuit. But there are others that speak with more deference and even in defense of Hail systems and Luke Skywalker. Why can't the Force be for everyone, asks one delegate. If Luke understands and supports Karen, why shouldn't we? Corporations discover and exploit planets all the time. Why is this different? Why would the government involve itself in this at all? Even a corporate representative from Hail Systems speaks in the company's defense, noting that Hail intends on selling the Kyber it has discovered, while many other entities would hoard it or pass it along only to the highest bidders. Furious, Leia storms down a hallway and into her private chambers after the senatorial session, noting, and this is the second paragraph, noting that if the Republic won't act, then perhaps they can conduct a more private and surgical operation to at least reach Luke, find Jason, and save Han. She summons Chewie, Poe, and the newly introduced Finn, and then bops the nose of a nearby astromech droid, showing them a series of messages she has received. One from Luke, one from Jason, and one from Han. Luke's message's purpose is to alert Leia that Jason is fine. While Jason's brief note was recorded en route to Kenobi, but sent after he arrived, explaining the telepathic link he shared with his uncle and noting that he needed to help him in this endeavor. Han's message is a little more ominous. As he flies closer to the source from the data he stole, his headaches have started to ratchet up again. His ship has primarily been flying itself as he rests. His goal is to get Jason out of Dodge. He apologizes for lying about going to Tatooine.
Wow.
So that's the first fourth of the movie, I would say, is this big, dramatic, governmental, organizational meeting of the Senate. Maybe you can picture it like it's an episode in their episodes 1 and 2 and 3. I don't really see it like that. I think something a little more, not like, I like how it's like huge and everything, but it doesn't need to be like that. But there's like a lot of argument, and the religion, and rather the delegates are starting to ask, like, why wouldn't we trust Luke?
I love that.
What is wrong with trusting Luke? So, and Hail Systems sends their own like delegate, basically defending the company. So there's like all of this arguing going on between all of the planets, and you see all the races and all of the, people flipping out.
So good. That's so good. I mean, it's so realistic that they would call up Luke to defend their stance. You know what I mean? Of course they would do that. Who better to, it's so great. And I love the little like sort of answering machine thing you just did with the messages. I mean, what a brilliant structure for storytelling,
Thank you. Yeah, well, this exposition, right? I mean, there has to be like some sort of exposition. So,
and it doesn't feel like forced exposition; it just feels like good storytelling.
Oh, thank you.
Nice stuff.
Yeah, and I like the idea of Leia using the astromech droid. Some other kind of, it's not R2 or anything, but and just bops it. It puts out his little.
Cool.
Yeah. So next up is back on the flagship called the Prophet. Karen confers with a corporate board of mostly unknown executives to alert them as to his plans for Kenobi and the Kyber. Luke stands silently in the background as all this happens. As a first order of business, he says, Hail Systems must ensure a robust defensive perimeter. As such, it needs to manufacture an army. In a series of diagrams and schematics, Karen shows the board the army he has in mind. Droids manufactured with Kyber power sources and implements, able to use lightsabers and powerful blasters and more. He calls for a sample. One of the droids walks in. He then calls in a prisoner that he's been holding, a random unknown alien of no consequence who did something undoubtedly stupid to get into Hail Systems' bad graces. He orders the droid to eliminate the prisoner. The droid does so with ruthless efficiency in front of everyone in the room. Karen smirks while most of the board looks on in horror. Kyber, Karen explains, is perhaps the only substance in the galaxy that has both enormous financial potential and inherent untapped power, and Hail Systems can essentially become a corporate government by leveraging both. So what he's basically telling them is that we can become an armada without a planet, or we can protect this planet, but we're really just mining it and using it. And we can have so much money and so much power that there's no other substance that can demand this, where we can just keep it and use it to great effect, like in these droids that basically force using droids, or Kyber using droids. I don't know that they could use the force. And then they can just sell it on the market, which they said that they were going to do.
That's awesome.
Leaving the boardroom, Karen and Luke walk and talk. So think like, West Wing. Luke expresses dismay and Karen totally ignoring the positive potential of Kyber and the Force, and is upset about his grotesque display of violence. As Luke notes, their original agreement was to balance everything, to invest in training proper Jedi and fomenting a Force-like religion and around the Order alongside a commercial reality for Kyber and the power that comes along with having control over essentially the entire galactic supply. It's clear that these two are at an impasse, but Luke is too far in. In fact, he's complicit, since he helped Hail Systems find Kenobi to begin with. Was he duped? When the two men split up hereafter, Luke goes back to his quarters where he finds Jacen. Something's up, Jacen tells Luke, before Luke can even tell him what's happening with Karen. Jaina is definitely getting close. He can feel it. Luke agrees. The family is onto them. So this brings us about halfway through the film, I would say. So Jacen is telling Luke can't even tell Jacen what's going on and how they're kind of in danger in over their heads before Jacen says, like, well, Jaina's close. I can feel her, coming. So let's see here. Back on Han's ship. So now we're back with Han. The jig is up. Jaina has stowed away on board his freighter. The two talk calmly, and Jaina vows to take care of her father as they continue on their journey together. In fact, she only made herself known before arriving at Kenobi because she feared her father wouldn't make it. Her appearance, Han realizes, is serendipitous. It gives him a chance to get his son back and maybe Luke too, as opposed to having to abort or being too weak to deal with whatever they find when they leave hyperspace near Kenobi. When the two arrive, they are intercepted by a wing of Hail Systems fighters but aren't attacked. Instead, they are escorted aboard Karen's flagship, and he and Luke meet Han and Jaina at the bottom of the ship's deck. Jaina and Luke embrace, and Han and Luke do a bro, like, hands on the shoulder kind of thing, like they're happy to see each other. The pair wonder where Jacen is. Luke assures them that he's fine. Moments later, an important scene occurs between Jacen and Jaina. As the twins reunite and catch up, Jacen lets Jaina in on what's obvious to the audience, but not yet to our players. Luke is in over his head. Karen is creating a private military in order to retain his control over Kenobi from various governments, criminal enterprises, and other entities. And Luke himself may be victimized by his infatuation with proliferating the Force, of founding a new Jedi Academy and expanding the role of Force as a religious and cultural institution in the galaxy, not just for those with microscopic advantages in their blood. Jaina explains that it was Luke himself who taught them that the control over the Force can't come through brute strength, but through patience, control, practice, and decency. The two agree that it's time to convince Luke and Han to get away from the Hail Systems armada, and they hatch a plan to do just that. So that's 3/4 or so of the way through the film. It's important to note, I didn't put this in. I don't know. I forgot to write this in. It should have been written in at this point.
Yeah.
Han, I really should have explained this. Karen understands that Han has a specific power over Luke and targets him telepathically immediately. That's why he's sick and having all of these. When Luke disappears, Han is unable to respond because he's in this fit. It almost reminds me a little bit of when we did Rosemary's Baby, and how, like, there's like a persistent sickness that and so he knows that Han is really the only one that can come for Luke, and so that's why Han is unable to basically function, is because Karen is doing something to him.
Oh, wow.
And as he gets closer to Karen after breaking away and lying about going to Tatooine, it starts to get worse.
Okay.
Because he's closer in proximity. So I should have written that.
Wow. Dude, that's good shit.
In other words, he anticipates that Luke is going to have a turn of like a change at heart, and they have to nip in the bud the dude that's going to eventually come for him.
Very cool.
The goal is simple in premise from here. Find a ship to steal, immediately jump to any coordinate, and then collect themselves as they snake back to Coruscant. Luke is surprisingly an easy mark for Jacen and Jaina, and the four conduct an operation not very much unlike Luke, Han's, and Ben's travels through the Death Star. So imagine 15 or 20 minutes of them really slinking around. They're fighting people. They're having events like whatever, a garbage chute type event or whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
They're intercepted by various enemies en route, encounter various dangers, but end up at their ship. All the while, they're in touch with Leia, who is with Poe, Finn, and Chewie, so they're still back on Coruscant. Leia has good news. She triangulated the data from Jacen's earlier video dispatch. She knows the exact location of the Armada and has dispatched fighters to help Han, Luke, Jacen, and Jaina escape. As their ship takes off out of the bay, X-Wings, Y-Wings, A-Wings, B-Wings, etc. jump in large numbers, and a chaotic scene or series of dogfights take place between Hail Systems fighters, which we've never seen before. They're not like TIE fighters. I don't even really envision what they're like, but there's something we've never seen.
That's cool.
And the modified newer model ships that are otherwise familiar to Star Wars fans. So this was what I was thinking was, I like the idea of new ships, just like I like the idea in the prequels of having old ships, but it doesn't really make any sense. It's like a Ford F-150 from 1980 still looks like a Ford F-150.
Largely,
so
right.
I would assume that like the X-Wings, Y-Wings, A-Wings, B-Wings are somewhat newer looking, but they look the same, basically.
Like a new model car. Yeah.
Right. They each have their own purpose. A Y-Wing's a bomber, I think, and stuff. And like so they all kind of still have their place. So that there are no new ships, really. It's like, these are the ships that we still use.
They're just slightly evolved.
Right.
In minuscule ways.
Right.
Subtle ways.
And then, so this dogfight's happening. The group is trying to just get out and live to see another day. They're way over their heads, and they just need to collect themselves. And so eventually Han, Luke, Jaina, and Jason successfully perform a micro jump and get away. As they collect themselves on board the ship, they debrief and make contact with home. It seems everyone is alive, well, and in a state of shock. Luke takes a data pad from his pocket and plugs it into their stolen ship's monitors, in which tons of stolen plans download and dispatch to various Republic sources. All of this, Luke says, is what Karen plans on doing with the planet Kenobi and his unlimited supply of kyber. They may have gotten away, he says, but they are far from done with this problem. It will not remain isolated to religious zealotry. He apologizes for his foolishness and asks everyone to trust him and to prepare for the inevitable day when the Republic will need to face off with Hail Systems and its kyber-powered army, or pay the consequences of ignoring the sinister potential of a massive corporation and its private military. So that's the way the film ends.
That's awesome.
Now, the thing I know people love Disney Plus, right? And I'm not like super into it, but from here, what I was envisioning was that this trilogy sets up a new status quo, and the status quo needed to be explained over 3 films. The governments are fractured. There's a major corporation that has more power than them, that has a source of power, and now is creating a private military based on kyber technology that will make them really hard to deal with. And so they've discovered this by working with the Hutts, by making some new friends along the way, like Finn, and all of the rest. And so the movie is really just about the trilogy is really just about the introduction of Hail Systems and this Force Prophet and the power that they emerge with because of this massive discovery that Luke helped them with. And Luke is kind of at fault. And so I see a Disney Plus kind of future from here in my hypothetical universe where you could go in many different directions. Jaina and Jason could have their own show or something.
Sure.
You could have something where Luke is trying to make things better. You can have a whole thing about the creation of the private military and the scientists that work on all of that or whatever. So what I was trying to do with this film was to focus on governmental forces and corporations, less on action, and try to make it so that it sets up a new basis for which all of these things can sprout from. Because when we think about everything we have now, they all sprout from 6 movies. So we need, I know now they're trying to get things off of the new movies, and they will, but we need new material in order to start, if we want this to be a universe. So that's kind of where my mind was at. I don't know if people like that approach, but
I think that's awesome.
Yeah, so that's kind of how
it's evergreen. You know, and I like the fact that you set something up for more. That it's interesting that we both did that rather than like putting the end on it and just saying like, this is it. You know,
it just felt too rushed. Otherwise, like there's a lot of storytelling potential with a corporation in this world, like we said, and we've never really seen anything like that. And also the idea of the gap of governmental agencies being, or governmental, representatives being legitimately confused. Like, well, why is this a problem? Like, you would imagine that there would be a populist movement amongst some planets and some species to be like, we want this. Or maybe there's some species that simply can't be Jedi, which I think is in the original lore as well.
Yeah,
so
that's
like,
very cool.
So it's not like it's overtly evil what's happening. It's not.
Right.
In fact, the only overt evil thing you ever see, I think, in the entire trilogy in some way is when Karen calls in the droid to kill that creature. And it's like incredible. I envision it as being like over the top violent, like in front of everyone.
That's really cool.
And it kind of opens everyone's eyes. It's like, what the fuck? Because I think even people in the room were like, I don't think Hail Systems executives think they're evil. It's kind of like Shinra.
Absolutely.
In Final Fantasy VII. They don't think that they're bad.
They don't see it that way.
No. So I like the idea of them opening their eyes only in the last minutes, basically, of the movie. They're like, holy shit. Like, we're in under this. This guy has all of this power over our corporation and us now.
I love that.
Yeah. So, and then that'll be the starting point for all of the new, whatever, fiction that would come out of it. So that's how I set it up. You got a very interesting flavored villain there. That's a villain like Star Wars has never seen in any iteration, I think. Very, very cool. Yeah. Thank you.
That really does set up an infinite amount of stories, characters, different directions you could go in. Yeah, that's a lot of fun, man. I really, really like that. I legit feel like this could be a Disney Plus series because it imbues itself with enough of classic Star Wars, but it feels so unique in a great way too. where it's treading into territory that Star Wars really hasn't, found itself really.
No, and it's private militaries and because they, like we've said, they've ventured into, and I call that in, at least in mine, just like you do with yours with the bounty hunters and Boba Fett. Like, we get a lot of the underworld element, which is awesome. We see that in Solo. I mean, I love that movie. I know you do too. I think it's really a great film, and it's fun to see criminal enterprises in this world. It reminds me a little bit of Dune, right? Like, where
definitely
like where spice traders and all this nefarious shit going on, and so that's cool. They've got that covered, and we bring that in here. But to see governments apart from the trade embargo and whatever the hell is going on Naboo and all of that, but to see that they're arguing with each other and that some of them aren't convinced sets up it's because usually it's good versus bad, it's obvious versus not obvious, and all of this. It's not like that here. And even calling Karen a bad guy, I think, is maybe a mistake.
Yeah,
maybe he's not. I don't know. I mean, it could be like a Joan of Arc type character, or like some sort of or Robin Hood type character, if you want to even look at it like that.
Yeah.
But instead of with money, it's like with the Force. And so I like the idea of playing with religion, and I like the idea of playing with companies and the power of companies. I mean, this is something Metal Gear does to great effect and all of that. So it's cool to bring all of those different elements in. So that's the story I've come up with.
Super fun. I think people are going to like that. I really think people are going to enjoy that. Yeah, a lot of great sci-fi stuff that really hasn't amazingly been tackled in Star Wars prior to you creating it. So that's, dude. And great characters. And and when you have a bad guy that sort of embodies this grayness, it sets up the good guys to make bad decisions too. Because how do you play off of a character that's not good and not bad, or maybe not as bad as you think, or doesn't consider themselves evil or has noble intentions or whatever? How does a good guy play off of that? It leaves all kinds of room for the good guys to do crazy shit and trying to decide how they maneuver around, where it's a clear-cut bad guy, then, at least as dangerous of the odds as you're up against, you have a clear-cut decision to make. When you're dealing with a bad guy, quote-unquote bad guy like this, it sets up much more interesting dynamic with the decisions everybody makes across the board. So super fun, man. I can't believe we got through all three of these. Yeah,
we did it. And yeah, I'm thrilled to also play with the idea of Luke fucking up. And
definitely,
I think you can imagine a character like him, farm boy from a moisture farm, in this adventure, and taps into this talent, and he has this family and all of that. But you can imagine that it's like a lot of pressure. And also that in doing good things, Luke is still naive. We see that we revisit Luke's stubbornness from Empire in this trilogy.
Right.
Where he's like, he doesn't even think it through. Like, what is this corporation doing? Why are they using me? He's responsible for this.
Sure.
Just as he was responsible to help save everyone, he's about to plummet them back into danger again. And so I like playing with those things. It makes Luke the bad guy without making him bad. And that was one of the things I know that people really didn't like, when I loved the idea of Luke actually just turning, which I know people could not handle, I don't think. And so this is about as close, I think, as you can do it without... and also to not introduce too many characters and to keep it more character driven and oriented. I struggle with that because I'm a bad dialogue writer and stuff. So I'm learning how to do that better.
I bet you're good at it. I bet you're better than you think at that. Because
we'll see soon. Because I don't want to spoil it yet. Actually,
okay. But you're right about Luke. You could see him being manipulated and seeing his weaknesses exploited. Because as powerful as he is, I love calling up his farm boy origins, where there's a simplicity there. If his friends are in trouble, he's gonna act. You know what I mean? Like, it's really easy to exploit him or get him out into the open because he's got an Achilles heel,
Definitely.
Or two. So yeah, it's cool, man. Very well done.
Thank you, Dig. Likewise. That was a fun exercise. I hope everyone enjoyed it. I think that's like 6 hours of fictional Star Wars. Well, Star Wars is fiction, but fictional Star Wars stories. So very well done. Thank you all for voting for this on Patreon and for supporting us over there at all. We couldn't do the show without you. Diggin, would you like to end with a dad joke?
I would. And I was going to... Hold on. I got to get off camera here for a sec. I'm hoping I keep I promised a prop joke last week, remember?
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, please.
I'm down here, don't worry. I'm not going to disappear long. Okay, which notebook is it in? I think it's in this one. Oh, man. Okay, which one is it in? I think I have it memorized. I just need my prop.
Okay. You're nervous. I can see that. I can see you're nervous.
No, I think I know the joke. I just wanted to. Okay. Here it is. Can you see? Kyle.
Yeah, what is that? Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay, it's like a step.
This is my step ladder. I never knew my real ladder. Look at the size of this prop.
I know, that's a big boy.
I was going to get a step stool, but then I figured people would say that's a step stool, not a step ladder.
Yeah, you got to be, if you're going to bring props in, you got to be on point.
But then again, I could have just said this is my step stool. I never knew my real stool. Right?
Yeah. Why? Yeah. Why? Yeah. Well, because you want the ER. Well, because I think you want the ER, like ladder father, ladder mother. I think that. You know.
Okay. All right. Yeah. That's pretty observant. I like it.
I would think so. I mean, I don't know.
First prop joke on Knockback.
I know. You're gonna next week. You're gonna mallet a fucking watermelon in front of everyone.
Nice. I'll have everything sheeted with the plastic.
Yeah. Oh
nice.
my God. I couldn't imagine finding that funny, but to each his own. Yeah.
What, Gallagher?
I watched a documentary on Gallagher actually like some years ago, and I was like, it's very interesting. I love documentaries about anything, but I was like, this is not funny. This was never funny. No,
I had a weird thing with mom and dad. They wouldn't let me watch Gallagher. Now, I don't remember his brand of comedy. Was it off color? Like, did he make sex jokes?
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was like a more adult oriented, but I don't think it was that great. I don't think it was that great.
But I always thought it was like I'm not allowed to watch the guy smash the watermelon. Like, what am I missing? You know? But they were saying it because obviously they didn't want to hear. They didn't want me to hear curses and stuff. But I thought for years, like, I'm not allowed to watch the guy smashing water. Like, what does that mean? Is it a sex joke? Like, I don't understand what that means.
It's like in Freaks and Geeks when they try trying to figure out the sex joke, you know, for that whole episode.
Did we talk about that on that episode?
I think so.
I think we must have covered that. Well done, my friend.
Yeah, likewise, Dave. Thank you for your time. It's time to go into we're recording this right before Memorial Day, so we're going to go into our long weekend now. And are you going into New Jersey?
Yeah, we're going to go down to the beach. I don't think the weather's going to be good. It's going to be a lot of Uno and Monopoly.
Yeah, good.
But it's good to get away.
Yeah, of course.
You know?
Of course. All right, man, cool.
Have fun. Everybody have fun out there.
Yes, please be safe and have fun. And thank you for your support, love, kindness of our show. Patreon.com/LastStandMedia. LastStandMedia.shop if you want merch, including your Knockback merch. And leave us nice reviews on iTunes and other podcast services. Follow us on YouTube, etc. That's it. We'll see you next time for more Knockback. Thank you so much. Until then, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Knockback, a retro and nostalgia podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from Central Virginia and the Philadelphia suburbs, USA. The show was conceived by and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Dagan Moriarty. Knockback's executive producer is Dustin Furman, and the show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. Stand's theme music is by Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including Knockback, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level or higher on Patreon, and we're grateful for your kindness and generosity.